We're going to talk about my music. We're going to talk about why I wrote certain songs, the meaning behind them, and the experience of doing these songs at live shows, etc. So strap yourself in. We got quite a show for you.
Illuminati is a thing you need to watch out for. They want to depopulate and slave us so much more. World domination, I'll get into that later. I'm hardcore, fierce and sexy. You're just a hater. You deserve the ridicule because you're an absolute zero. I'm the keeper of the chalice, a rock and roll hero. I'm not an idiot nobody listens to, because I'm not a failure in life like you. Let's talk about Bill Gates and the mark of the beast, and the orgies in the streets at the Catholic feasts, and Bill and Hillary's human trafficking ring, and George Soros got the money to pay for everything. Socialism is for losers, working for the devil. Chumps that can't fight, they ain't on my level. It takes an evil one to try to debunk and doubt it, so I'd rather die than stop talking about it. Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out. Watch out for the Illuminati. Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out. Watch out for the Illuminati. Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out. Watch out for the Illuminati. Watch out for the Illuminati.
It's your boy in the building, MC Too Tall. What up? And you're watching the MC Too Tall show. And we're going to take a slight break from the political stuff. We're going to talk about my music and the certain songs, certain key songs that helped me build my following. That a lot of my fans know about, and why I do it. And of course I do it for the fans and stuff like that. And so here we go. Now, as I've mentioned in the past, I've written this in several of my accounts of my life story on social media and on the website that I once had long ago. I had gotten my start or first interest in hip-hop before even knowing that it was called hip-hop. Looking out the window in the 70s as a young child in the Marlboro Projects, third story window, looking down, seen a bunch of kids from the neighborhood that turned over a bunch of garbage cans, started playing on these things like bongos, while one person would do what I thought was street poetry. Basically, they weren't singing, they were talking to the rhythm while rhyming. In other words, they were rapping. And when it came the next person's time to rhyme, they'd get off the bongos, and the last person that spoke or last person that emceed would take over, start playing the bongos, and the next person would start rhyming. And of course, they did this until sundown, and right around dusk, the cops broke it up. They made the kids put the garbage pails back where they got them from. And of course, there were the cops to ruin everybody's day. Back to blue, by the way, back to blue. And of course, if you're a Knicks fan, back to orange and blue. But anyway, fast forward a few years later, I'm lying down on my couch listening to WKTU, which back then was 92 on the FM dial. And I heard what I thought was going to be Good Times by Chic, which was a very popular song at that time. And somebody just started rapping over it. Of course, it was Wonder Mike of the Sugar Hill Gang. And they just It was back to back, people just rapping. Of course, Big Bang Hank, Master G, and they went back to back 2, maybe 3 times over. And then towards the end, they did a promo rap for 92 KTU, not 103.5. So 103.5 KTU is a resurrection of 92 KTU. Of course, 92 on the FM dial became K-Rock, which ironically became the hosting station for the Howard Stern show before he quit on them to join Sirius XM and flush his career down the toilet over a couple of decades. But anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about me and my life experiences and how I got into music. I also used to write instrumental songs and melodies and things like that. I remember my father brought home this big giant $1,000 electronic organ. $1,000 in 1983. That was pretty expensive. And this was like an upright organ with a huge built-in speaker. It was definitely a furniture piece. And we would play songs on there and stuff. You switch it to piano mode. My mother, God bless her righteous soul in holy heaven above, she used to play some of the old ragtime stuff that she had learned over time. Like she used to play Scott Joplin. You know, yes, Scott Joplin was way before her time, but it just proved by example to us that it's okay for us to get into music that are times prior to our own. Like, no way, no how am I from the doo-wop era, but I did like some of those doo-wop songs. Shaboom, for example, one of my favorite songs. And you get the idea. And, you know, I grew up listening to other songs as well. You know, in the 70s, I used to take my mother's radio, turn on WABC on the AM dial long before it was talk radio. It was a music station with a lot of ex-WINS good guys that spilled over into ABC when WINS became an all-news station. So I got to know those people as ABC disc jockeys. Dan Ingram, Ron Lundy, Harry Harrison, George Michael, Chuck Leonard, who eventually became a Kiss FM DJ, who has since passed away. A lot of those guys have since passed away. I think Harry Harrison might be the only one among them that might still be alive. But yeah, even George Michael, not George Michael, the pop singer, George Michael, the disc jockey, sports analyst. Another one who has passed away. But I used to listen to them. They used to play Elton John, Captain and Tennille, Vicky Sue Robinson, Maxine Nightingale. So it was pretty well-rounded, you know. Then I would listen to CBS FM, Bill Brown, Don K. Reed, Jack Spector. You know, Jack Spector, not Phil Spector. And I would listen to guys like that. You know, later on, WKTU had DJs like Jay Thomas, Joe Corsi, of course, famous for having Paco as their main DJ. May he rest in peace. So, as I was saying, I was pretty well-rounded. I was not only into the hip-hop music as it was forming and becoming more mainstream, but I was gravitating to freestyle and house music, some techno later on in the 90s. And I even got into some of the alternative rock and industrial dance music in those days. I'm not new to this shit. And so, this is some of the stuff that I was into. And I had done a few songs in junior high school. I was very good at battle rapping in those days. I wouldn't try it now, but I did pay my dues. I did come up in the ranks, and eventually started recording my own music. Shot my music, put them on cassettes. Didn't land any labels, so I started distributing the music on my own right to the people, and pretty much doubled my income. I was working in McDonald's at the time, and I was able to double my income. True story. I doubled my income selling mixtapes with my rhymes slipped in there. My friends Richie and Frankie would also make mixtapes. That's when the three of us put our heads together and formed something that we would later call Putting Heads Out, which were basically three of us doing mixtapes. And I decided to take my concept of slipping my own rhymes into these mixtapes, and that's how songs like Live from Steeplechase Park and Bring the Drama went out there. And that's what plays a big part in why I use very popular songs as instrumentals for those two songs. Of course, for Live from Steeplechase Park, I used a Scenario remix instrumental. And for Bring the Drama, I used Public Enemy's Give It Up as the instrumental. And pretty much, you know, the format. On Live from Steeplechase Park, I sang two verses, rapped the third verse. I tweaked it a little bit with Bring the Drama, where I sang the first verse, and then I rapped the next two verses, and then actually cut off the third verse early, and then slipped in other things. I remixed it in 2002 and put in like little some news clipping in there, and it was pretty fun. I was able to take that with Live from Steeplechase Park and a bunch of other songs of mine, burn them to CD, and I think I put it as PHO featuring John A. Krantz, because at the time in those days I had dropped the Too Tall name, was using my government name, and so that's why sometimes I'll refer to myself as John Too Tall Krantz rather than just MC Too Tall. Matter of fact, when I released The Conglomerate, which was my very first legit solo album, an actual album that's solely just me, The Conglomerate was credited to John A. Krantz, with the letters MC Too Tall kind of melting off. Basically, I was trying to put out a message that I was shedding the MC Too Tall name. But apparently my friend Brian Dillon, who had all kinds of connections in the punk rock scene, I had given him a few of them because I had become friends with some of his friends. And I said, yeah, give this one to Vlad, give this one to Fran, give this one to Robert and Eugene, and so forth. And yeah, and here's a copy for you, and here's an extra copy. And so what happened was he gave it to these people, and then next thing you know, I was billed on the second installment of Lollapalooza as MC Too Tall. I said, you know what? I'm not going to fuss. I'm not going to fight. I'm sure they would change it, but then but I'm sure these people heard my music by then, and they're going to look forward to somebody named MC Too Tall, and if I introduce myself as John A. Krantz, they're going to be like, who the hell is this guy doing these MC Too Tall covers, and not know that it's the same person. So rather than create all that confusion, I just said, fuck it. I got up there as MC Too Tall, and then my albums ever since then were built under MC Too Tall, except for the PHO stuff, in which I put myself down as John Too Tall Krantz. And now you know. And a lot of those songs from the Conglomerate were songs I've penned in the 90s and 2000s. Early 2000s. Pasta Peas, for example, was from like 2001. The Wave was from 2001. Feelin' Me was from 2002. And some of these songs that I penned earlier on carried over into the following album, which I called Industrialization. Now, the reason behind this is that I had originally made the Conglomerate because, of course, I had some of my political songs in there. And basically, I'm explaining in one of the songs that there's a conglomerate of secret societies that are out there with no care in the world, that they're destroying the world as long as they're lining their pockets. It's pretty much a theme of it. And that's why I call the album The Conglomerate. And the cover art is a photo of me like this, reaching into my jacket, presumably to pull out a gun at a train station to bust shots at the All-CNI peering in from outside the train station. You know, a pretty freaking deep message in the cover art. And it was a big word. So a lot of people are like, that's a big $5 word I never heard of before. Conglomerate. What? You know, why are you gonna do this? Why are you gonna confuse us or make us dizzy with these big words like conglomerate? So I said, okay, you know, I see what happened here. This created some kind of buzz. Now I have to make up another $5 word for my next album. Industrialization. And basically, a lot of my instrumentals started becoming more experimental, more industrialized. So it was like a lot of experimental noise in the audio production. A lot of abstract sounds in the audio production. So I say, you know what? I think I just created industrial rap here. And yes, there are people that do industrial sounding music and rap over their instrumentals, and it sounds great and everything. But I'm the one that just started coining it and calling it industrial rap. You know, it's like Cowboy from the Furious Five didn't invent hip hop, but he's the one that gave hip hop the name. A lot of people want to credit Africa Bambaataa. Africa Bambaataa may, if you put aside the pederast activity, may have had his place, but I think the show goes on with or without him. They say he had a vast collection of music and a lot of connections. Well, so did Biz Markie. A lot of people didn't know that. He was ahead of his time with creating electronic dance music and incorporating hip hop. Well, so did Cosmo D from Nucleus. A lot of people don't know that. And you had other people that were around the same time as Africa Bambaataa that were doing the same damn thing. Divine Sounds, Twilight 22, In Deep. These weren't Johnny Come Latelys that were writing Africa Bambaataa's coattails. They were just coincidentally, simultaneously doing their own thing in different parts of the city. So, as far as taking the flowers away from Africa Bambaataa, it's easy to do. It's easy to chisel this man's face off of any monuments of hip hop that may exist out there, and deservingly so. I think people that are ready to throw hands on behalf of Africa Bambaataa are simps. And this is coming from a person who once idolized Africa Bambaataa himself and was so proud that he shook his hand and everything. Had I known where that hand has been, I would have went nowhere near him. I wouldn't have been in that building. But here we are. Fast forward. My second album was Industrialization. But my first album, let's talk about Pass Up Ease. I wanted to do something with a little bit of vulgarity in it, purposely to sound edgy. Yes, in those days I was adding the vulgarity to be edgy. Now not so much anymore. But Past Up Ease, I wanted something that had kind of like a funky 70s soul appeal to it with a little rough edge to it. That's why Past Up Ease was made. Same thing with The Wave, although I didn't curse much in the song The Wave. And basically that I wanted to make that like the next dance craze, the next cha-cha slide, or what have you. Something you could play a piece of it at stadiums. And I gave it a basic beat so that it would create a nice. Now I never got to do this song live at any stadiums, but I've done it at nightclubs, bars, and concert halls. And yes, I did have crowds doing The Wave, starting at Freddy's Bar and Backroom at the second installment of Vladapalooza. I was at the first Vladapalooza as an audience member, and there I was at the second Vladapalooza as one of the performers with a live band. a super group, if you will. I had Vlad from Black Death playing guitar for me. I had Sal the Bounty Hunter, also from Black Death, on guitar. Also from the Silver. I forgot the name of the band. It was Brian Dillon's project, the Silver Stream Band. There, I had Joe Filosa, which is one of the most highly respected drummers of the scene, as my drummer. I often say that's my first drummer. I had Brian Dillon, who was in several groups at that time, Box of Crayons, Black Death, and Pocket Monster, which was later renamed Bob Monroe and Pocket Monster, which is now called Gene Poole's Pocket Monster. But back then it was just called Pocket Monster. Brian Dillon was part of that band. He was part of Black Death. He was part of Box of Crayons. And I had him as my hype man. And it was pretty cool. And this is what makes me excited to do live shows. There's a certain rush I got from live shows. And a lot of the angst that I had for years, decades out of my life, a lot of that angst left my body. And I felt better. It was an enjoyable experience to let off that energy. And a relieving experience to let off that energy. So, Industrialization, the song What's It For? It's basically, it came from a place of frustration and futility. And it says, if you're going to strive for the house, the circular driveway, everybody strives for a house with a circular driveway, a cute dog on the lawn named Scruffy, 2 or 3 kids, a beautiful wife and all that. And you look around, you had a war going on 2 fronts, always a threat of nuclear war going on, even after the fall of the Soviet Union. So it's like, yeah, you strive for all these things, but what is it for? And I get into that. And then you have the people from the other perspective that their concern is world peace and for all these global problems to disappear. But then again, what's the point of solving that problem if you got these even bigger problems right under your nose? Homegrown grillers killing over crack. Every other kid packs, or just watch your back. And, things like that. Letting off a slug, there's no lifeline for these kids to tug. They scrabble and they hustle for a bite to eat until they bite the hand that feeds them and go under the sheet. In other words, these kids that become drug dealers, packing a piece, and then they think they're smarter than their connect. They cut their connect's throat figuratively, and then they end up with their own throats cut physically and go under a sheet. And then the other thing is people just want to battle egos. Meanwhile, they're latching onto somebody else for the bragging rights of all the material things they acquired through someone else. That's where that third verse comes in. So, Buddy Boy was written in 2008. Buddy Boy was one of the songs I wrote for the Industrialization album. And whenever I would play Southpaw, the owner would specifically want me to do the song Buddy Boy. And let me tell you, I did not disappoint. And Yes, I used to do the whole song, including the third verse. That included the words, Buddy got hip huggers and a Ricky Martin shirt. Buddy, how you dress, you may as well be in a skirt. And I like the wordplay on that. And I really believe in what I say in the second verse when I say, let me tell you something, buddy, boy, bud, you ain't no thug. You don't want to throw no hands, I'll squash you like a bug. You be wildin' out like you're some kind of mental case, but you ain't all that crazy once I punch you in the face. And it's true, you do have a lot of people with these tremendous egos and all this aggression, and once you give them a shot right in their big nose, they cry. And that was the whole point behind that. And also people that want to be big stars and rush into it without realizing that they become owned by major labels. This is why I'm glad I had yes, originally I had hopes and aspirations of being part of a major label. But in hindsight, I'm glad I never signed up to a major label. I'm one of the nicest rappers to never be on radio, to never be on FM radio. That's how I like to refer to myself. I'm one of the nicest rappers. I'm at least one of the top 10 nicest rappers never to be on FM radio. Yeah, I'm not going to say I'm best of the best because somebody somewhere is going to get pissed off and say, well, what about me? And get into some shit with me. I don't want to do that. I'm a peaceful, placid motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? And so, here we are, bro. Here we are. And I could go down the line of all these other songs. So there was that. Hellfire Brimstone was on my Industrialization album. I had quite a few songs on there that were pretty good. But Buddy Boy, What's It For? Hellfire Brimstone. The title track, which is called By Design, and then I put in parentheses, Industrialization. And it was pretty good stuff. But I really started improving my sound and audio quality when it came to Aeronautics. Now, Aeronautics, that's when I started writing songs exclusively for the album Aeronautics, because I had already gotten all those other previously written songs from the 90s and early 2000s finally recorded, in the can, distributed, and out there. So now we get into other things here. We get into songs that I had exclusively written for the album I'm working on. Age of Aeronautics, great song. You had Mosh to This, of course, which I did with two prominent members of the underground punk group, the Bloody Muffs. And they are a very popular underground punk group. And I personally find their music to be more listenable than some of the mainstream groups. And they never went mainstream. They probably never will go mainstream, but that is to their credit, not their detriment, because they got so much street cred. Like anybody who has an understanding of the hardcore scene and the underground punk scene, they know who the Bloody Muffs are. And I had two of those members guest appearing with their instruments respectively, on my song Mosh to This. And I couldn't get the drummer, who Jonesy will tell you himself that I hooked them up with. And ironically, because I guess she was on like maternity leave or something, or she couldn't make it, so I had to use an electronic drum. But at the live shows, you bet your little tuckus, I would perform those songs live with the entire band, and we would bring down the house. And yes, each and every time, that song would cause a damn mosh pit. I had people like trying to barrel into me, which was like freaking awesome. It meant the song was doing its job, and kudos to Jonesy and Jessica for their input on that song. I think we've all complimented each other very well with our respective sounds on that song. And now, the title track, Age of Aeronautics, I've recently put that on YouTube. It's a very snappy, popular addition to my playlist now. And I've had Respect Is Due is on there. I got a few nice songs on there. I Do Hip Hop. And there's a bunch of songs that I really want to put on there, that I really want to put on the internet now, that are only on CD format, like the song I Do Hip Hop. I don't know why that happened to be, but that's how shit fell into place. Because I think I Do Hip Hop is one of my favorite songs on that whole album. And also the song Killer Killer For Real. The song Killer Killer For Real actually comes right before Mosh to This on the Aeronautics album. And that's just me and an acoustic guitar, strumming on an acoustic guitar. And that's when I first adopted the name Killer Killer For Real. Because if this one's calling himself a killer, that one's calling himself a killer, I'm going to call myself a killer too. I never performed that song live with the guitar, but I did perform it a cappella quite a few times. And yes, it created the look, a certain universal look that each and every person in the crowd would have. It was almost like a Golden Sipple face. It was like, because they see some dude come up, this fun-loving dude with glasses and a fedora come up, and then I come up there and go, I'm MC Too Tall, I'm on Apex Steel, but I'm changing my name to Killer Killer For Real. And it fucking blows minds. So the impact that I have on people, and that's what this video is about, the impact that I have on the fans. And why I continue to do this, I do it for the fans. What's another great thing that I've done? So I've done that album. I moved on to Killer Killer Outpost. Now let me remind you that after Conglomerate, there's a general rule of thumb with every album that I do, that there be at least one or two songs on there that is a remake in some way, shape, or form of a song from the Conglomerate album. Like, for example, on Industrialization, I have my good friend Rodney Timmons doing the Tim's remix. The Tim's remix of Feeling Me. And it has a real funky, more soulful sound to it, and a nice gritty bass line. and it's way freaking cool. And then there's a live version of Brain on there. Now I already had two versions of Brain on the Conglomerate, the original and the remix, and the remix was done over a loop of State Farm's. No, the group was Yaz. The song is State Farm, and I loop a beat from State Farm by Yaz, and then add the little samples of bam 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 bam. Can't wait to bring in the bum. And then with the live version that I did from Parkside Lounge with Box of Crayons, they had a song called Dirty Minds. And basically the instrumental of Dirty Minds, they just replay it live right there at the Parkside Lounge. And I just recite the lyrics to Brain over it. That's why when you see that on the list of songs, whether it's on the album or on the internet or whatever, it's called Brain, Dirty Minded Version Live featuring Box of Crayons. Because the instrumental is from their song Dirty Minds, and the lyrics are from my song Brain. So that explains that. So I knock out two Conglomerate songs in Industrialization. Then I joined forces with Box of Crayons again to do a live version of The Wave from Southpaw. And when I do the Wave at Southpaw, that is one dope friggin' version. And so yes, that goes on there, and I have the little vocoded part to my man with the turban hiding out in the cave. And I should have done the. But yeah, it was really, really cool. I'm glad I managed to get that out there, the Wave. So, with Killer Killer Outpost, I remake Turn It Out. Now, Turn It Out, the original Turn It Out was done over the instrumental of James Brown Is Still Alive. I wanted to create a techno song, but I made the song sound more disco-y. And I use a couple of beats. This is back when me and Italian Ice was still talking. I used a couple of beats that were pre-programmed off of his keyboard. And since I was using his equipment, I had him get on as a guest. You know, as sort of like a hype man. I had my friend Glenn on there as Mr. Dance Man, whose single Girls That Swallow was doing pretty well in the streets of Brooklyn. Because a lot of my music I would distribute directly to people. And you would actually hear these songs being played on Gravesend streets. And it's one of those things where you have to be there to know what I'm talking about. But you're not going to hear anybody saying, I was in this place you're talking about during this time you're talking about, and I still don't know what you're talking about. You're never going to hear people tell you that. Okay? People are going to know what I'm talking about when I name the time frame and the place. Whoever says, I never heard of you from this time and place, it means they weren't around. It means they're the nobodies that didn't get out of their house because they didn't get a whiff in their comfy house of me because they weren't out there in these streets at night. So don't buy into that. Don't buy into people saying, well, I was in Gravesend in the 90s and I didn't hear of you back then. They're full of shit about them being in Gravesend in these streets in the 90s then. If they say that last part that they didn't hear of me. But anyway. On Killer Killer Outpost, I remake Turn It Out. And then for the following album, I remake Past the Peas. And say for the Fiery Red Horse album, I did Past the Peas 2.0. It features DJ Spaz on there. I think I remake some other song from the Conglomerate on there. Or am I thinking of something else? I know that when I did new logos and new marketing schemes, however, the album, not the song, but when I did the album, the last song on there is Say Yeah. I think I call it Say Yeah Revisited or something like that. And I have Scarlet Venom on there doing some gibberish about shitting the bed. But I'm glad I had this long discussion with you of the history of my music and why I write these songs, why I title these albums, why I give these albums these titles. So, in the series of Unparalleled Greatness, which is my first 3 albums, I have 3 $5 words that aren't heard of in everyday language. The Conglomerate, Industrialization, Aeronautics. And then in the Killer series, I have Killer Killer Outpost, A Fiery Red Horse, and new logos and new marketing schemes. A Fiery Red Horse, I had given it that title because of a verse in the book of Revelation in the Bible. It's a very biblical song, biblical album. The entire album, cover to cover, opening to close, is biblical. Intro to outro. My album, A Fiery Red Horse, is biblical. And this is why I have a following, because I have the versatility to make a biblical album, to make it pop in the clubs without a single curse word. Now, mind you, I was coming out the gate with my solo career cursing on purpose just to be edgy and controversial, and then I pull it back and make no curses. Past the Peas version 2.0. Remember how vulgar I said it was in the beginning? 0 cursing. I wanted to take the grittiest, nastiest song I've ever written and just clean up the lyrics, but then turn around and add so much edge to the beat that it popped again in 2011. And people were actually playing it in the goth clubs. Because if you remember, around that time, I was crossing over into the goth scene, the goth industrial scene to be exact. And I had all kinds of vampires and lichen babes that couldn't keep their claws and paws off of me. And yeah, it was an awesome experience. You know, I was the man. I was the man. If there was a trophy with the title Mr. Get Laid, boy oh boy, let me tell you, that would have been me. So, and that is a tribute to my music. but it's also the beginning of the end, because I had unfortunately gone astray from the message, ironically, and it was on the heels of putting out my biblical album, A Fiery Red Horse. And that's from chapter 6, verse 4 of the book of Revelation. It reads, "And another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given the power to take peace from the earth and to make men slay each other. To him was given a large sword." And I think that's one of my favorite albums. I would say my two favorite albums would probably be it's a tough call. Probably my two favorite albums would be Aeronautics and A Fiery Red Horse. And they were similar. They were similar in production. And I will say this: Aeronautics was a cleaner album as far as lyrics go, by comparison to the two previous albums. I mean, in the two previous albums, the top songs in each one of them, there were songs with curses right in the chorus. Pass the peas. I'm going, motherfuckers, just pass the peas. In freaking the Industrialization album, one of the biggest songs in there was "What's It For?", which isn't really the chorus of the song. The chorus is, "What the fuck is it for?" And so I had definitely toned down the cursing. There's still a few curse words in some of the songs on that album, but it is the album of the three with the least amount of cursing. And I guess Killa Killa Outpost, think of the conglomerate with better audio production. But you take the same raunchiness of the conglomerate and you dump it into better audio production, and you get Killa Killa Outpost. And even the intro and outro and interlude of that album had a hot beat to it. That, and then I clean it up even more and put out A Fiery Red Horse, and which did very well on iTunes. Let me tell you, talk about doubling my income to my 9-to-5. I managed to do that through iTunes with the with the album A Fiery Red Horse. And the most popular song on there was GSRS version 2.0, I must say. And one of my other popular songs on there was the revamp. No, the revamps from... that was also on iTunes, by the way. I had released a limited track version of Killa Killa Outpost on iTunes as well. I called it the Deluxe Gold Edition, which was actually less tracks on there. So in other words, the title of it had more bells and whistles, but the album itself had less than the actual plain titled album. But, advertising gimmick, you do what you do. So anyway, A Fiery Red Horse, Dark and Angry, GSRS version 2.0, very popular stuff on there. And let's get into why I wrote that song. Now, a lot of people look at certain things as either these physical things that are just there, or symbols of good, or symbols of evil. Including the title, Goats, Snakes, Ravens, and Scorpions. And then I go into all these things, ancient triangular-shaped metallic things, silver and crystal mystical rings that could change events with the wave of a hand, circles of unknown origin in the sand. I mean, these things have meaning behind them, or maybe not. You know, second verse, I get into abortion docs, cyber goths, and tattooed bisexual women that smoke pot. Some of these things may have a good meaning. Some of these things may have a bad meaning. Some of these things are like, who gives a shit? I tell you this though, that line where I scream out the words tattooed bisexual women that smoke pot, that had gotten a lot of controversy. A lot of controversy in the scene, man. A lot of controversy in the scene. That I had my own DJ telling me, listen, this guy is bisexual. You're offending him. He's a bigwig in the scene. He could have you banned from the clubs and this and that. And it turned out he got mad at me himself, not this guy. I was actually still allowed in some of the places he had jurisdiction over. But my own DJ got mad at me, quit on me, cursed me out. I mean, we patched things up ever since, but it doesn't change history. I gotta say it. Gotta say it happened because it happened. Yeah. Because of that line, I was labeled a homophobe. Because of a lot of things in my songs, I was labeled a homophobe. And let me tell you something. I'm not homophobic. But I won't go to the extent of making you think I'm homosexual just to prove I'm not homophobic. So I gotta draw the line somewhere. I mean, there's only so far I could go to prove what I am or what I'm not. You know, if it compromises you knowing that I'm a straight guy, then the extent of proving that I'm not homophobic only goes so far. So, as I was saying, yeah, so that line, amongst other things in the lyrics of my music, sparked unnecessary controversy. It was not it's not my fault for saying it. I would say it's their fault for perceiving it the way they did. And I stand on that. And Sydney Sweeney has great genes. Along those same lines. Follow? And so, I mean, it was tough putting together and releasing new logos and new marketing schemes. It's the only album that was digitally released only, or through the internet only. And I have the one and only, I have possession of the one and only CD pressing of new logos and new marketing schemes. And it's not exactly where I could just go right to where it is, pick it out, show you and say, here it is. It's in existence. I know because I made it and I stored it away. But damn if I remember where I stored it away. But it's probably for the better. ultimately, I'll get all this stuff online. It'll be on the interwebs, and you can listen to all my great music. And why? I do it for the fans. And on to my fans, I say this. Respect God. Watch out for the Illuminati. Follow and share my beautiful content. We'll do this again soon. Stay strong, keep kicking that slang. Here's your boy in the building. Hip-hop legend, recording engineer, underground rock and roll hero, New York City goth scene ambassador, MC Too Tall. Yaha.